All right. Buenos dias. Hola, hola. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. I believe we are October 23rd, 2023. Thank you for joining the Maddie's Community Conversation Call. Today, the topic is the mind-body connection, maximizing performance and building resilience through thought and emotions. I am so excited to be co-hosting this talk with you. My name's Jose Ocaño. I'm the founder and CEO of Hatching, where we help people live better and work better. And I'd love to introduce to you my co-host, the wonderful, magnificently brilliant Nadia Oseguera.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
How are you, Nadia? ¿Cómo estás?
I'm well. It's a little gloomy in Los Angeles, so you know that'll throw us off quite a bit, but I'm hanging in there.
I know. Welcome, everybody, as you're joining. Please put in the chat, your name, what organization you're from, where you live. One of my favorite things about this community is that there's people from all over the country, even all over the world, who join these calls to come with an open mind and with an open heart to learn. And so today I'm really thrilled because you're going to be listening from someone that I really respect, someone that I really love, shaman and mindset coach Ty Ma. And so welcome, Ty. We're excited to introduce you a little bit later, more thoroughly, but welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. So as everybody starts to kind of fill in, we love to start with a question of the day. And that question of the day is, what is one thing that you do to maintain a healthy work-life balance and prioritize well-being? So think about that. What is one thing you do to maintain a healthy work-life balance and prioritize your well-being? Nadia, what do you do?
I was like, I know he's gonna call on me.
I
Um,
am.
I started this morning lifting some weights. Those who know me in person, I'm extremely tiny, so you're like, what? But going to the gym and lifting weights specifically really clears my mind, helps me get started with, on the right foot. So that's what I do. I carve out some time in the morning to take care of my physical and mental well-being.
Oh, I love that. What about for you, Ty?
I definitely spend time journaling, meditating, doing some mindfulness practices. And if I have anything that's been bothering me that I haven't been able to shake, I try to address that with some of the techniques that we're going to be using today.
I love it. I use a 5-minute journal, and it's where I write down, 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things that I'm looking forward to, like an affirmation, something I'm going to need to repeat and remind myself for the day. And then I close my day with writing 3 things that, went well and something that I learned. And so it's really grounding, and it's so cool to see all of the different comments. I go out for a walk with my dog, Reggie. Same, like one of the blessings of having a pet that you can walk is the amount of time I spend outside. I was talking to a friend recently, and they don't have any pet, or they have a cat that doesn't go outside. And so I was always telling them, like, we're at the park all the time during different times of the day. And so we get to experience just the outdoors a lot more. And I'm like, I'm so grateful to my dog. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I gotta go outside and walk you again if you already need to go out. But then I'm like, I'm outside, because I think one of the quickest ways to connect to ourselves is actually connecting to nature. So keep all of these things coming. And if you just joined the call, welcome. Please put in the chat your name, what organization you're with, and where you live and where you're located, if you like. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Nadia, who's going to talk about some national updates.
Yes, so we want to open up the floor to anybody who has any updates that you'd like to share. Feel free to drop them in the chat, or please unmute so we can all hear your updates.
Hi, everybody. Kathy from Canada here. Nice to see you all. Happy Monday.
Hey, friends.
Just a reminder that our Virtual Violence Link Coalition conference is coming up November 8 and 9. So because it's virtual, all of you can come. So I'm hoping to see many, many of you there. I will put the information in the chat for sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Anybody else?
Vincent Medley with the Maddie Human Animal Support Services Project. and wanted to remind everyone we have a webinar coming up, Creating Connections, How to Build Partnerships Between Animal and Human Organizations. I will put that webinar in the chat.
That sounds super fascinating. I will definitely be registering. Thank you. Any others? Please feel free to unmute again or drop in the chat.
Hi, I'm Kelly from Maddie's Fund. Thursday, we will be sending out information about Camp Maddie, which is a new 4-hour virtual learning series that we are going to be having on Thursday, December 7th. It is going to focus on dog foster recruitment. So be on the lookout for more information. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Kelly. Can take one more if anybody else has anything to add. Okay, was counting down in my head and giving folks time. I guess I'll hand it back to you, Jose. And again, feel free to keep dropping things in the chat if anything comes up.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So before I actually introduce Coach Ty, I wanted to ask everybody to make sure that you have something you either can write with, because there's going to be some reflection prompts later in the presentation. So whether you like to do that on your phone, or if you have some notes on your computer, or you want to grab something to write with, I highly recommend it, because that's one of the main benefits of what we're going to learn today, is actually going through some of these exercises. And so I just want to say how special it is for me personally to be introducing Coach Ty, because I've known Ty my whole entire life. And Ty is a mindset coach and someone that has helped me immensely through one of the biggest challenges of my life, of career change, the loss of my mother. It was this big kind of shift in my life professionally and personally. And so I have been recommending Ty to work with people, and she has been, and many of those folks, some of whom are on the call, have had incredible success. So we thought we really wanted to use this platform to share Ty's wisdom. So let me actually give you a little intro on Ty Ma. So Ty is a Chicana Mayo Indian shaman, psychic, teacher, and mindset coach on a mission to help people harness the power of their minds, reconnect with their guides and ancestors through spirit communication, and support self-healing journeys. With a lifetime of exposure to healing practices, Ty's passion is rooted in teaching techniques that empower individuals and restore their creative power and personal sovereignty. Ty utilizes various tools and coaching to reframe unproductive thinking, enhance self-awareness, and facilitate personal growth. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Awesome. So Allison's going to help me share my slides. I welcome all of you. If you haven't got your note-taking materials out, I invite you to do that as well, because what I would like for us to do is experience a shift here, but I'll get into that. So this presentation is called The Mind-Body Connection, Maximizing Performance and Building Resilience Through Thoughts and Emotions. Next slide. Thank you. What we will go over in this presentation is a somatic exercise called switching. We're going to go over what brain-heart coherence is and the benefits of being in brain-heart coherent state. We're going to talk about fight or flight and what happens in the body when we're in that state. We're going to talk about a thoughts, feelings, actions, feedback loop. And we're going to go through a Feel to Flourish framework to help you empower your challenges. Empower you within your challenges. My bad. So an example of a somatic, and what I hope you leave this presentation with is an example of a somatic exercise that you can remember, that is easy for you to call back on anytime in your day. So that way you can create a sense of coherence deliberately. And I also hope that you leave here with an understanding of how your thoughts, feelings, actions influence each other. And I also hope you leave here today with a to-do list of the next actions you'll take in your current challenges. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I wanted to begin by creating coherence, and I wanted to share with you a somatic exercise that you could use after this presentation. So this is that time. I invite you to do this exercise with me. Sit on your chair with your feet flat on the ground. Cross your left ankle over your right. Put your hands in front of you with your thumbs up in the air. Turn your thumbs downward towards the floor. Put your right hand over your left. Interlace your hands and swoop up under and rest your hands on your chest. Take a deep breath here and relax. If you are unable to do this for comfort or ability, you can augment this position by maybe putting your hands flat on your chest. But if you do augment it for ability or comfort, please visualize yourself in this position. Take another deep breath here and really relax your body. Maybe close your eyes. Feel your energy go into the center where everything is calm, the center of the storm. It's good to remain in this position for at least 30 seconds. A minimum of 30 seconds is good. And a minute is better. Longer than a minute is better than that. But it really depends on how much time you have and how comfortable you are in this position. We'll wait here a couple more seconds to really send to our body that we are safe, that we are not required to be in a state of fight or flight, that our environment is not threatening us. And if you want to step it up with this exercise, you might tell yourself, I am safe. And I invite you to take one last deep breath. And as you exhale, really release your body, any tension that you have in there, and come out of the position and back into the presentation. Thank you so much for that. So why did we begin with switching? As I mentioned, I wanted us to cultivate on purpose a state of brain-heart coherence. And one of the reasons I wanted to create that state of coherence is because later on, I want to walk you through a framework called Feel to Flourish, and creating coherence is the first step in that framework. Plus, I want to do switching a couple times throughout this presentation, so that way you really remember what hand goes over what wrist goes over what. I want you to remember the position so that way you could take it with you. Next slide, please. So the brain-heart coherence is when the brain and the heart are working together. And this goes beyond brain-heart coherence. Coherence in general in the body is when all of the systems are working together. The benefits of being in a state of coherence is that when you are in that state, you have all of your mental faculties. You have access to the part of your brain that makes rational decisions. And because you're not in a state of reactivity, you're able to observe your emotions and rather than react to them. And this gives you more agency on how you choose to move forward. Also, when you're in a state of coherence, your immune system, your digestive system, your respiratory system, and all other major body systems are functioning optimally. Next slide, please. Okay, so the opposite of a state of coherence is a fight or flight trauma response. What happens in the body when you're in that state is that you're more reactive. A lot of your energy is going to kind of perceiving your environment as a potential threat. And so that's where all of your energy going is, to this heightened alert state. And what's happening inside of your body is that stress hormones are being released and adrenaline levels are increasing. And again, because all that energy is being allotted to those areas, when it comes to rational thinking, in order to save energy for survival, that part of your brain starts to shut down and your ability for rational thinking decreases. Now, over time, what happens in a fight or flight state is that your body systems, your immune system, your digestive system, respiratory system, all those major systems, they start to shut down. So we all know that, or we have heard that stress creates disease. But I wonder how many of us think about stress as our nervous system being irregulated. And if we knew that, maybe, and we also know that there are specific techniques to regulate the nervous system, I wonder if we would take more. I wonder if we would take more responsibility to regulate our nervous systems deliberately, so that way we don't inevitably end up attracting disease because our major body systems are shutting down. So this is where I wanted to ask you something, Jose, about fight or flight. I wanted to know, now that you understand what it feels like in your nervous system, when your nervous system is activated, and you know what it's like when you're experiencing a trauma response, I was wondering if you remember a time when you worked at an animal shelter, when you knew that now you know that at that time your nervous system was activated. And I also want to know, how may you have acted back then from that activated place? And now, knowing what you know, what do you think you would do today?
Yeah, I definitely think, especially when I was working in the shelter in Tucson, I was there for 10 years and did a lot of different jobs. And I think about constantly in reactivity mode, reacting to people who needed support at intake, reacting to, oh, sorry. There we go. Reacting to whatever my bosses wanted, or the people that I would eventually, with the privilege of managing, needed and wanted. And I think a lot of times, because I wasn't taking the time to regulate my body, I was doing my best to respond thoughtfully. And a lot of times I missed. And so I think about times when I was in a position of power and influence and someone came in and I wasn't regulated and I just shut them down, and how that kind of created a whole ripple of effects with that person and other staff. And so I think what I know now is I would take 30 seconds, 60 seconds to go to the other room, go to my car, go to a closet, and just do switching, do tapping, do some deep breathing, get on YouTube, listen to a 5-minute guided meditation just to regulate myself, so that I could show up with a way deeper level of intention, because our words and our action and the energy we have long-term impacts on people that many of which we'll never see.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can imagine that working in that environment is almost like a constant or consistent trigger or activation for the nervous system, and being aware that you have control over this, it could be game changing in that kind of environment. So next slide, please. This is the Feel to Flourish framework for self-empowerment that I ultimately want to walk you through today. It's really important that I explain what the difference is between coherence and fight or flight before we go through this, because the first step in the framework is to create coherence by doing a somatic exercise. So before all of us start walking through this framework, I have to introduce you to a thoughts, feelings, actions feedback loop. Next slide, please. So in cognitive behavioral coaching, there is this theory that our thoughts, feelings, and actions relate to and influence each other. And this is one of the ways to demonstrate that. This is the thoughts, feelings, actions feedback loop. And it exists, like I said, to show us how not only do they influence each other, our thoughts, feelings, and actions, but they actually continue to feed into each other and become a feedback loop, aka a paradigm. Next slide, please. So I thought I would start by just giving a general example of how this feedback loop could work. So let's think about this as you're at work, and these are the thoughts, feelings, actions that we're theorizing in this situation. So you're at work and your dominant thought is, things will never change around here. Nobody knows what they're doing. Now, I don't know what it's like in the animal industry business, but I do know that I've had plenty of jobs where this could be something that I'm thinking about. And so that's why I went with this. So you're in your work, you're thinking thoughts like, things will never change around here. Nobody knows what they're doing. Now, if you're thinking that, you're likely to be feeling discouraged, frustrated, angry, sad, or hopeless. And if you're feeling discouraged, frustrated, angry, sad, or hopeless, then the actions that are likely to come from that place is to complain, focus on, point out everything that's not working, how incompetent people are, and how impossible it is to create a positive change. Or you might disassociate because those feelings are really heavy to deal with, especially on a daily basis. And you might just numb those feelings, or I heard a term today, trauma block. You might trauma block those feelings with addictions to food, smoking, overworking, etc. Next slide. But if you go to work and you practice and you understand how your thoughts, feelings, and actions influence each other, and so now you're deliberately trying to put in different thoughts that serve you better. Some of the examples would be positive change is possible, and I'm open to being a part of it. Another example could be it may require teamwork and creativity, but I'm willing to do my part. So those two thoughts are way different than things will never change around here. Nobody knows what they're doing. So because that thought is different, it's going to induce different feelings within me. So if I'm going to work and I'm thinking to myself, positive change is possible and I'm open to being part of it, it might require teamwork and creativity, but I'm willing to do my part. If you're going from that mindset, then your feelings are more likely to be helpful, motivated, inspired, and creative. And if you're feeling hopeful, motivated, inspired, and creative, then your actions might be more along the lines of showing up to work open-minded because you're hopeful and you're motivated. You might share your ideas because you're inspired, instead of just blocking out your ideas because your past thought used to tell you there's never going to be a change. No one's ever going to change around here. So the difference is you might show up and share your ideas. Also, if you're seeing yourself, if your thought is positive change is possible and I'm open to being a part of it, you might prioritize your well-being and open yourself up to thinking outside of the box, because now you're thinking, I'm open to being part of this positive change. So that means I should open myself up to new ideas, and I open myself to showing up as part of the solution. Next slide, please. So how do I personally use this framework? I use it for literally everything. Once I figured out how to use this, I literally use it for everything. But most recently, when I was getting ready for this call, I realized that I was feeling fearful, anxious, and doubtful. And I caught myself feeling fearful, anxious, and doubtful when I caught myself distracting myself and procrastinating instead of getting the presentation done. And when I realized I was procrastinating, that's not something I do. I just knew, oh, I must be thinking something that is leading to this action of procrastinating. So let me do the work and ask myself, what are you thinking right now? So I did some, I decided to do the Feel to Flourish framework. I started with switching because feeling fearful, anxious, and doubtful, just having those feelings was activating my nervous system. I was feeling anxious, right? And so I couldn't get from where I was to where I wanted to be in that anxious feeling. So I did some regulating first, I did some switching, and then I asked myself, what are you thinking? And the thoughts that came out were I would be made fun of, or I would be judged harshly for being who I am, showing up as a shaman in a professional atmosphere. So for those thoughts were so overwhelming to me that I was procrastinating getting this presentation done because I was scared. It was causing me to feel doubtful. So once I understood that I was dealing with my inner critic and that my inner critic was trying to keep me from growing and going outside of my comfort zone, I knew that it was super important for me to continue and walk through this framework. So I asked myself at that point how I wanted to feel instead of fearful, anxious, and doubtful. So when I asked myself that, the answer was, I want to feel calm, confident, and helpful. So then I asked myself, what do I need to tell myself to cultivate those feelings? So then I went within myself, and the answers that came up were, whether people like me or not, I'm safe, I accept myself, and what I have to offer is authentic and helpful. When I said those statements to myself, I literally started to feel calm, confident, and helpful. And I realized that feeling fearful, anxious, and doubtful was a product of me being a recovering codependent and people pleaser. So all of this stuff made a lot of sense to me. Now, moving forward within the framework to create my empowered actions, I asked myself, what would I do? What actions would I take? How would I behave if I already felt 100% calm, confident, and helpful? So the answer to that was, if I already felt calm, confident, and helpful, I would stop procrastinating. I would finish my presentation and I would show up authentically. So once I did all that work, I knew how I wanted to feel. I knew what I needed to tell myself to cultivate those feelings. And I knew what I would do if I already felt that way. I had what I needed to navigate the challenge, and so off I went. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned before, this is the Feel to Flourish framework. I want to tell you a story about my client, Anne, and how she walked through this framework. And we're getting closer to the time where I'm going to invite you to start walking through this framework too. So get your pens ready, because when it's time, we're going to do a little bit of a rapid fire. We're going to give you 1 minute to write down your own answers. And then after that, I'm just going to start talking again. Jose is going to say something in the middle, like 30 seconds. And he's going to say, hey, you have 30 seconds. This is how you can participate now. And then after that 30 seconds, I'm probably just going to start talking again and go to the next slide. So my client, Anne, she works full-time as a receptionist. It's a very fast-paced and demanding clinic. She manages tons of people's schedules by herself. She interacts with hundreds of clients walking through the door all on her own. She manages an inventory, and on top of that, she has a severe case of dyslexia that has been challenging her whole life. And her dyslexia makes her feel extra overwhelmed at work because she has her own processes of reading and processing written material. And so she literally has an extra challenge on top of that. Now, her job is so demanding, she gets home exhausted. And like many of us in the workforce, she only has 2 days off per week to get all the things done: the laundry, the cleaning, the grocery shopping, much less manage to put something fun on the schedule, as well as prioritize her self-care and well-being and get ready for the next week. So she's conflicted because she loves her job and she loves to help people, but every week, like clockwork, on Sunday evening, her body fills with dread when she thinks about returning to work, which is a consistently stressful environment for her. She was literally paralyzed with dread when I was talking to her. So I asked her, hey, do you want to do the Feel to Flourish framework to help you navigate this overwhelming dread? And she agreed. So we did some switching first to create coherence and address her nervous system, address that sensation of being overwhelmed. And once she was regulated, I asked her, how do you want to feel within this situation? She thought for a moment, and then she replied, I want to feel relaxed, capable, and knowledgeable at work. Next slide, please. Why do we pick emotions when referring to the thoughts, feelings, and action feed loop as a starting point? So according to healthybrains.org, we process about 70,000 thoughts per day. So it's not always easy to monitor and or catch yourself in a thought. Because think about that, 70,000 thoughts just racing through, you're processing all this information. There's tons of stuff going on in a day. So to kind of ask yourself to monitor every single little thought would literally mean that you are just doing that. I mean, all the other things on your to-do list might not get to it if this is the way that you go about it, or you could just be really good at it. And who am I to say? But on the other hand, we process way less emotions. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it was more like 4,000 or maybe 40,000. But either way, we process a significantly amount of less emotions through our body. Furthermore, the main reason, other than there being so many thoughts going through our brains on a daily basis, that I like to choose starting with feelings is that you may not always know what you're thinking, but eventually you're going to catch on to how you're feeling. You're going to realize, I don't really feel good. Even if you don't really know how to name the emotion, you're going to realize, I don't feel the way I want to feel. I feel off. I feel bad. And so that's why when we're doing a framework like this, I like to start with emotions because they're pretty tangible. So we're going to, before I start and give you this opportunity to ask yourself and bring up a situation of your own. Because the first step in the framework is creating coherence, I invite you to do switching with me one more time. So that way, one, we create coherence again, and two, this is another opportunity for you to remember the exercise. So sit with your feet flat on the ground, put your left ankle over your right ankle, your arms in front of you, shift your thumbs downward towards the floor, your right wrist over your left, interlace your hands and swoop up and rest on your chest. Take a deep breath here. And as you exhale, release any tension in your body. This is a good time to do a head scan from head to toe as you breathe, and notice if you're carrying any tension in your head, jaw, shoulders, back, stomach, hips, anywhere that you tend to tighten your body. Really breathe into that area and allow your oxygen to relax and release that area and create some space. This time around, I'd like you to imagine yourself in a safe place. This could be a place that you know of, that's a real life place, your bedroom, one of your favorite places in nature, a relative's house, or it could be something you make up. Just imagine yourself in this safe place. Doing this exercise is sending messages to your nervous system that you are safe. There's no need to react to the environment. You are not in threat. Again, this is a good place to add in some positive affirmations like I am safe. If you're feeling any kind of emotions that that you know of, you can say, even though I'm feeling this way, I am safe. This is a huge statement because you're acknowledging you don't feel well, you're acknowledging your feelings, but you're also acknowledging that even though you feel that way, you're safe. Take one final deep breath here, as deep as you can. Maybe even hold it at the top. And as you exhale, come out of the position and back to the presentation. Thank you so much for doing that for me. So that not only are we regulating our own systems, but we're co-regulating because we're together. And just based on the other things that happen when you do things together, like community acupuncture, community Reiki, community healing, meditating together, just based on that, I would imagine that when you regulate your nervous system together, that there's a very powerful effect that happens. Okay, so now it's your turn. I want you to get ready to go through this framework. I want you to think of a situation that you're experiencing in life or at work that has been challenging you. Just bring it to your attention, kind of get in touch with it. And when you have that situation in your mind and you kind of understand how you're already navigating that situation and how you're already feeling in that situation, I want you to ask yourself and write down, how do you want to feel within the situation? Write the first three emotions that come to mind and don't think too hard. You have 1 minute.
Right. Everyone, you have about 30 seconds left. And I invite anybody, if you want to just share in the chat, anything that you're feeling and relating to, like, what are the things you want to feel free to do that. If this is something that you want to hold close to your heart, that's also very much appropriate. Final about 15, 20 seconds.
Okay, next slide, please. After discovering that Anne wanted to feel relaxed, capable, and knowledgeable instead of dreadful when it came to return to work, I asked her what she needed to tell herself to cultivate those feelings. So she thought for a moment, and then she wrote down, I have the knowledge and skills for this job. I always have the right tool for this job, and I can ask for help if I need to. When she repeated these statements to herself, she could begin to sense what relaxed, capable, and knowledgeable felt like. Next slide, please. So in a minute, I'm going to invite you to create your own empowered statement. But I just wanted to remind you not to think too hard. This is where it could kind of get a little interesting. So don't think too hard. This should be the tip of the brain answer. We're trying to access subconscious information here. If you have any questions about this part of the framework or any part at all, I'm going to be answering questions in the Maddie's forum. So feel free to reach out. But for now, don't think too hard. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself and write down, what do I need to say to myself to feel my empowered emotions, to feel how I want to feel? You have 1 minute.
All right, 30 seconds. Again, anybody would like to share in the chat, we would welcome that. Thank you to those who previously participated in the chat. It's great seeing how you want to feel.
Okay, next slide, please. After Anne created her empowered statements, I have the knowledge and skills for this job. I always have the right tool for the job, and I can ask for help if I needed to. I asked her to breathe deep, repeat the empowered statements to herself, and intentionally allow herself to feel what it might be like to experience the emotions calm, capable, and knowledgeable. I told her to ask herself, if I already felt 100% calm, capable, and knowledgeable, what actions would I take / how would I behave? She thought for a moment, gave herself that time, and then she responded with, if I already felt calm, capable, and knowledgeable, I would ask for help when I needed, and I wouldn't stress, meaning I would regulate my nervous system when needed. So next slide, please. Okay, now it's your turn. I invite you to ask yourself and write down, when I feel my chosen empowered emotions, what actions do I take and how do I behave? So do your best to cultivate or imagine those feelings so that way you can predict what your actions would be from that emotional place. You have 1 minute.
All right, folks, 30 more seconds.
Okay, so I want y'all to understand that y'all just have created your to-do list. You've created your to-do list within your challenge, within the situation that you're hoping or wanting to navigate. And you now know everything you need to know to move forward. Next slide, please. The day Anne went back to work after we did the Feel to Flourish framework, the environment was fast-paced and hectic as usual, of course. She, however, was feeling relaxed, capable, and knowledgeable. And from that place, she was able to lean into her empowered actions of asking for help and regulating her nervous system as needed. And she continues to utilize her empowered statements to remind herself of how she wants to feel at work. So even though her environment did not change at all, she did. She changed her mind. She changed the way she was thinking, feeling, and behaving, showing up. She's much happier. She's relaxed and productive at work, and she's no longer feeling paralyzed by dread every Sunday. Now, that is huge for her because she only has 2 days per week to get all those things done. Now, when she was feeling dread, that processing the dread and feeling the dread, can you imagine meeting a friend for a cup of tea and you can't be present with your friend because in the back of your mind, you're experiencing those thoughts and you're feeling in your body the feeling of dread of going back to work? It's getting in the way of those 2 days that she has to completely fill herself back up again. So this for her was super, super game changing. Next slide, please. So going forward, you two are armed with what it takes to shift your individual paradigm. So I want to remind you that this is a feedback loop. You jump in, you take those actions. When you take those empowered actions, it's going to reinforce the thoughts that you created. Thinking that is going to reinforce the emotions that you want to feel. And it's going to keep reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing. And a paradigm is the way that the habits that we have. So you are armed with what it takes to create your own habits, your own reality. How will you apply this information to your life going forward? If you already know and have some information that you want to share, feel free to throw it in the chat of how you apply this information to your life. Otherwise, let it be a question that sits in the back of your mind that you answer as you live your life the next couple days and as challenges start to come up. Ask yourself, how can I apply what I just learned to this challenge, to this situation going forward? Next slide. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to be in the Maddie's forum answering questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to connect with you and talk with you more, answer your questions. I do work with clients doing this type of work and much more one-on-one. And I currently have a wait list that you can put your name on. I have an open enrollment period coming up soon, and I would love to meet you, talk with you, and work with you. My website is shamantaima.com. And if you're on Instagram, I invite you to follow me on Instagram because I always give out free daily insights and all of the reels that I create. If you click on the caption, there's very often journal prompts and free goodies to help you with your challenges. Other than that, I think I'm done with the presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ty. And, you know, every time I sit back and reflect on the feedback loop and your Feel to Flourish framework, it's really incredible how something that is very, in some ways, simplistic, right? You think it's like A plus B equals C. And we were on a call recently with one of your clients, and she said one of the things that she really enjoyed about this model is that it's very logical. And as someone who's very logic minded, this was something that she could use and uses and plugs into every time she is triggered and wants to be more intentional about how do I want to move forward. And I think what this speaks to is so much of the nature of the work that we do in the animal well-being space. So much of it is beyond our control, because what is producing the needless suffering of animals is the needless suffering of people. And so because of that, those are huge, huge issues. And yet every day there's still someone at the door who needs our help. And I think your framework is a reminder of like, how do we actually preserve ourselves, preserve our sense of well-being so that we can stay engaged in the work while not compromising ourselves in the process, you know? So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And I definitely know that this framework could be of major benefit in the animal caring industry, because there is solutions that are needed here, and there are problems that we are facing, and lives are at stake. And so it's really important to maximize the actions that we take going forward. And also, if we're going into work thinking that we're going to be part of a solution, and we're showing up as that, then I think that in the long run, when it comes to our collective objectives and our collective goals, we are at much better what am I trying to say? We're better off. Basically, we're more likely to get to the solutions, even if right now they seem impossible. If we all start doing our part like that, we can come up with solutions that weren't there before. And in fact, that's where all solutions come from: the brain, the mind, the ideas. All solutions under the sun come from this place. So being in a state of coherence, your mind is fertile for those solutions. And being on a team that prioritizes this, your organization is really going to be able to think outside the box, position themselves to create solutions that have never been thought of or enacted before.
Yeah, I love that. Nadia, do we have any questions in the chat? I know we only have a few more moments together.
Yeah, there was one question. It's a little bit of a lengthy question. However, I'll just like paraphrase. So essentially, this framework is very useful, but there are some situations where folks have, trauma sometimes caused by, parents who maybe were not super encouraging. I know something I deal with is negative self-talk, and so the question was asking like, what advice do you have for people who have those messages deeply ingrained?
Yes, totally. Amazing question. So what I love about, so in the chat and also in the Maddie's forum, there's going to be a link to this called Capacitar Emergency Response Kit. And in there is more somatic exercises that you can use that are geared toward trauma. So when it comes to trauma of our past, everyday environments can activate that trauma that's within our nervous system. So maybe our parents or our early caregivers instilled a narrative within us, and that was a long time ago, and now we're at work, and maybe our boss or our coworker says something that mirrors that inner narrative that they instilled, and now our nervous system is activated and our body is back then. Our body is back to when we were 5 years old, etc. So that's why the first step on this framework is to do a somatic exercise, because likely we are triggered in some way, shape, or form. So you don't necessarily need to know while you're regulating why you're regulating. Oh, this is because this early caregiver used to tell me this. You don't need to know that stuff per se in the moment. You just need to be able to tell that you're activated. And in that moment, do something to regulate your emotion, your system, because again, you're telling yourself, even though the situation's happening at work, even though my boss said that to me, that was then, this is now, I am safe. So once your nervous system gets those messages that you are safe, you are out of that place of trauma, and you're able to think more clearly and be able to reframe those inner narratives. So the inner critic can speak to us in those voices from the people of the past, or just our own like inner devil, like the cartoons, angel and devil type of thing. So the second part, or the part where we create empowered statements, that's where we're literally rewriting our own narrative and saying no thank you to the old narratives that caused the trauma to begin with.
Thank you so much, Ty. I definitely will carry the I am safe statement with me as far as I can remember. And yeah, I just want to appreciate you for sharing this with the animal well-being space. I know a lot of us can use this framework. And so a reminder to everybody, please check out the forum. There's going to be a ton of resources, and Ty will be available to answer your questions. And that is all we got for today, right on time. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Take care and remember that you are safe.
Thank you so much.
Adios. Be well,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.